بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. We come to the 8th of the Ashab al-Ashar al-Mubashara, the 10 who were promised Jannah in this life itself. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with them and to reward them in keeping with His majesty and grace. These were the best of the best, the greatest of the great. And this one is Saad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, who was by relationship an uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Saad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, whose full name was Saad ibn Abi Waqqas ibn Wahib al-Zuhri. And he was, as I mentioned, one of the uncles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of his closest companions, a great military commander, the founder of Kufa as a city, and he served as the governor of Kufa under Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, on whose command he established that city. He was the commander of the army in the battle of Qadsiya, in the conquest of Persia. He was the 7th free adult man to embrace Islam, which he did at the age of 17. He participated in all the battles, the Ghazwat of Rasulullah sallallahu. When we talk in terms of the Sirah, when we say Ghazwa, it means a battle in which Rasulullah sallallahu participated, and a Sariya was a battle in which he did not participate, but he sent a military force under the command of somebody else to fight that battle. So Tabuk, for example, was a Ghazwa because he led it himself, and Mota, which was before that, was a Ghazwa which was led by other people, Ja'far ibn al-Tayyar, ibn Abi Talib, and others. Sayyidina Saad radiallahu anhu became very famous as the commander of the Muslims in the battle of Qadsiya and the conquest of the Sasanian Persian capital of Ctesiphon in 636. After the battle of Qadsiya and the siege of Ctesiphon, Saad radiallahu anhu served as the supreme commander of the Rashidun army, the army of the Khulafa Rashida in Iraq, which conquered Khuzestan and built the city of Kufa, which was a garrison city or a cantonment, as you might call it. Many traditions of Chinese Muslims believe that he also introduced Islam to China during a diplomatic visit in the year 651. Sayyidina Saad was one of the Ibn Ishaq. In this history, he says that Sayyidina Saad was one of the several people who were invited to Islam by Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, and he accepted. Sayyidina Saad's mother opposed her son's conversion and threatened to go on a hunger strike until he left Islam, but he told her that he was not going to change no matter what she did. And eventually she gave up the idea of the hunger strike because of his insistence and his constancy in being a Muslim. Rasulullah told Sayyidina Saad that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had praised his firmness in faith, and also told him to be kinder to his mother as a matter of filial piety, which is an important virtue in Islam. So alhamdulillah, even though here the mother was trying to force him out of Islam. Islam still decrees that should not be a reason not to be kind to the parents. You don't obey them, but you still treat them with kindness and with respect. Sayyidina Saad's brother Amir also converted, in which the mother again threatened to go or went on a hunger strike, but he also could not convince her second son. According to Ibn Hisham's version of Ibn Ishaq's Sirah, Saad radiallahu anhu and a number of other Muslims were criticized by a group of polytheists in Mecca. This criticism led to a fight, and Sayyidina Saad and one other man, they had a fight, and Sayyidina Saad hit the man with a camel bone, which Ibn Ishaq says was the first blood to be shed in Islam. According to Fath al-Bari of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Saad radiallahu anhu migrated to Medina before Rasulullah with Ibn Maktoum, who was the blind Sahabi, and Musab ibn Umair radiallahu anhu, and they continued to be and practice Islam in Medina. So their hijrah was before the hijrah of Rasulullah. During the march to Badr, Rasulullah sent Sayyidina Sa'ad, Sayyidina Ali, and Zubayr bin Awam radiallahu anhum ajma'in to scout the enemy's movements, as the Muslim army that marched from Medina originally intended to capture the rich caravan of Abu Sufyan bin Harb instead of facing the main forces of the Meccan Quraysh under Abu Jahl ibn Hisham. Of course, if they had done that, the main forces would not have come. The main forces came because the caravan of Abu Sufyan ibn Harb escaped the Muslims, and Abu Sufyan sent a man to Makkah to say that he was under threat and therefore the Makkans should come to his aid, which happened. According to another account of history, Sayyidina Saad's first feat of archery, he was known as an archer. He was a very, very accomplished archer, and his first feat of archery occurred during the Battle of Badr in 624. In this battle, the Muslims formed a phalanx, which is a particular way of deployment in the infantry. Hadith states that in the midst of battle, Sayyidina Saad prayed for his arrow to hit the enemy while stringing his bow, and with Rasulullah also made this dua, and so Sayyidina Saad's arrow hit the particular enemy soldier that he wanted to hit. The biographers and the historians of Battle of Badr say that Sayyidina Saad's archery skills became a big problem for the enemy in this Battle of Badr. Sayyidina Saad also joined close combat, hand to hand, during the final phase as the Muslims began to gain the upper hand. He killed a Qurayshi champion called Sa'id ibn al-As and retrieved a sword known as Dhul Qutayfa. These were, the soldiers, medieval times and earlier, they used to name their weapons, and the weapons were very, very important for them, and then swords were very often given names. And he presented this to Rasulullah as a prize of war. He also managed to capture 2 Qurayshi soldiers during this battle, so he got 2 prisoners as well. Sayyidina Saad and his teenage brother Umair asked to participate in the battle, but eventually, because of his persistence, Rasulullah agreed, uh, even though he was very young, and his brother Umair was killed in the battle. He became shaheed in the battle. In the Battle of Uhud, Sayyidina Saad radiallahu anhu served in an archer regiment. As the Muslim army, as you know, in this battle, two parts of this battle. In the initial part, the Muslims gained victory to the extent that they even got to the camp of the enemy, and the enemy soldiers, they ran away. So the Muslims got the booty right in the beginning, very quickly into the battle. They grabbed the camp of the enemy and they got all the booty. But that is when the archers who Rasulullah had stationed on the hill, which directly faced Al-Uhud, and between Uhud and this hill there was a passage, and Nabi Sallallahu was afraid that Khalid bin Walid, who was the commander of the Qurayshi cavalry, would use that passage to attack the Muslims from the rear. So he had stationed a group of archers with specific instructions to say, you will not leave this place even if you see the vultures eating from our bodies. So meaning, under no circumstances are you to leave this hilltop until you are commanded to do so. Nabi Sallallahu said, by myself. Now, when they saw, and the Muslims saw their brothers, the other Muslims, taking the ghanima, taking the booty from the enemy camp, there was a ikhtilaf, there was a difference of opinion between them, and some of them said, look, the battle is over, the enemy is gone, our people are taking the booty, and if we don't leave now and go, then we will lose, we will not get any booty, we will lose. So let us go. Circumstances have changed. Others who were there, they said, look, we cannot do this. We have been commanded by Rasulullah not to leave this place no matter what happens. But there was an argument, and others said, no, that was a general instruction, it doesn't apply now because circumstances have changed. Just think about this. This is the kind of argument that today we do with regard to different hadiths of Rasulullah, different practices, different parts of the Sunnah, different commands of Nabi Sallallahu. We say, oh, but you see, this is doesn't apply anymore. Times have changed. See what happened when people use this argument at that time. When they said times have changed, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala completely turned the tide of battle. And Muslims who were winning until that time, completely the tide of battle was turned and they lost terribly. 70 of the Muslims, 70 of the Sahaba were killed after this, because as soon as the archers left the hilltop, Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, at that time he was not a Muslim, he attacked through that gap with his cavalry, and the Muslims were caught between the infantry on one side and the cavalry behind them, and they were routed and literally massacred practically, because 70 of the Sahaba of Rasulullah were shaheed, were killed, including Musab ibn Umair radiallahu anhu and Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was a terrible tragedy, great calamity, and the reason for that was that they disobeyed the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, and the excuse they used was the excuse that people use till today. Rasulullah was, troops were scattered, Nabi Sallallahu was separated from the people. He was grievously injured, and Sayyidina Saad radiallahu anhu was one of the few, Talha bin Ubaidullah, Abu Dujana, and these people were there who were around Nabi Sallallahu, and they tried to save him. Sayyidina Saad fired many arrows, and in one case he fired multiple arrows at once in that dire situation. Rasulullah ﷺ gathered arrows for him and stood next to him while he continuously shot, allowing the Muslims to retreat. And Nabi ﷺ praised his actions. Later, we know the whole tide of battle, how it turned and so on, and how Sayyidina Saad was one of the people who literally protected Rasulullah with his own body and with his own life. In 636, after the ascension of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu as the Khalifa, he sent Sayyidina Saad to lead a corps towards Iraq to assist Abu Ubaidah al-Thaqafi in the Muslim conquest of Persia. Before they could reach, a message from Iraq arrived saying that Abu Ubaid was killed in action during the Battle of the Bridge, and the Rashidun soldiers were forced to withdraw to the southwest of Iraq. This Sayyidina Umar originally wanted to send about 12,000 soldiers. He was still collecting the forces, but when this happened, he sent Sayyidina Saad to Iraq with just 6,000 soldiers, and he instructed the Rashidun armies in Iraq to merge with Sayyidina Saad's forces, and this happened. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, the armies there had just defeated the Sasani forces in the Battle of Buwaib. Sayyidina Umar appointed Sayyidina Saad as the commander and placed the other three under his command. So the other three were Jarir bin Abdullah al-Bajali and al-Musanna bin Haritha and Banu Shayban. These were the three commanders who had defeated the Sasani Persians. Sayyidina Saad radiallahu anhu collected about totally 30,000 soldiers and from everywhere. According to one of these writers, historians, Al-Baslama, he said that Rustam Farrukhzad, the Sasani commander, led a massive army to confront the Khilafah, deliberately marched slowly as a strategy to cause Sayyidina Saad's army to lose their patience and to start a battle. However, Al-Musanna advised Sayyidina Saad to move to the periphery of Iraq's desert and avoid moving the army deep into Sasani territory. Sayyidina Saad agreed, and they moved according to Al-Musanna's advice. According to Tawari's account, there was internal conflict in the Sasani kingdom and Sasani dynasty also. The Persian faction of the Sasani civil war that steered the policies of influenced the policies of Yazdegerd III. This was at odds with Rustam, the commander of the Sasanian army, most powerful commander. Rustam urged patience and protracted warfare instead of outright assault on the Arabs, and he exchanged letters with Zohra bin Hawiya with the intention of making peace. Zohra stated that if the Sasanis converted to Islam, the Arab armies would withdraw and return only to Persia as merchants. Tabari's narrative states that Rustam was prepared to convert in order to avoid military confrontation, but other factions in the Sasani government refused to agree to such terms, and so the battle eventually had to be fought. According to another historian, the battle occurred over 4 days, and this is the Battle of Qadsiya. Overseeing the platform with Saad Sayyidina Radiallahu Anhu, overseeing the battle from a tent overlooking the battlefield. The Sasanis relied on their elephant corps. They had elephants in the army. They relied on them to beat the Arabs. Then on the 4th day, however, Rustam himself got killed. And it's a very peculiar kind of way that happened. There was a sandstorm, very heavy sandstorm. And so Rustam, he did what they normally do, which is make the camel sit down, his mount, and then lie down in the shade of the camel, in the leeway, the lee of the wind. And Rustam did that, but his camel was loaded with weapons, axes and maces and so on, swords, which was very heavy, and also all these sharp things. One of the Muslim soldiers, his name was Hilal bin Ullafa, accidentally cut the girdle, the strap that goes around the belly of the camel holding the load on his back. He accidentally cut the girdle of the camel, and his whole saddle with all the load on it fell on top of Rustam and broke his back, and he was sort of half dead and paralyzed, and Hilal then beheaded him, and he shouted that he has killed Rustam, who was the main commander. This obviously demoralized the Sasanian Persian forces. After the battle, after Qadsiya, Sayyidina Saad then marched to subdue the Sasanian capital of Ctesiphon. This was a very, very beautiful city, very large city, built by Shahryar, who was the emperor of the Persians. Shahryar was defeated in a duel by a Muslim soldier whose name was Abu Nabata Naim al-Raji, who was given the crown and bracelets of Shahryar as the spoils of war. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had predicted to this man, saying that one day will come when you will wear the bracelets of the king, of the emperor of Persia, and that is what came true. This is when the famous crossing of the Tigris happened, which was, the Tigris was in flood, and it was considered to be impossible to cross it. The Persians took all the boats on to the other side. Sayyidina Saad, however, was convinced that Yazdegerd, the Persian king, had to be captured, and he should not be allowed to use his wealth to build another army, because he had been defeated once and he was running. So Sayyidina Saad couldn't wait for the river level to fall. So he told the army that they should cross the river with their mounts, despite the high tide and the flood. So even though there were no boats, and they did that, and they went into the river, and the historians say that it was almost like they were riding on the water instead of in it. Ibn Kathir said that the Sasanis in the Madain capital, they said they are crazy, these are jinn, these are not human beings. And they just couldn't believe that the entire army attempted, and they did cross the torrent without boats and without loss. When the whole army crossed the river, they immediately chased the Sasanis who had fled towards Madain. The army was unable to find them, but Yazdagard had evacuated his entire family and much of his property from the city. The army managed to secure Madain's treasury and also found Yazdagard's crown and gown in a sack loaded on a mule. They were confiscated by Zuhra, who brought them to Sayyidina Saad. They found the place was abandoned. Sayyidina Saad sent Sayyidina Salman to give a khutbah in the huge city, megalopolis. In the month of Safar, he gathered his troop to carry out the Jummah prayers in the palace. According to Ibn Shamil, this was the first Jummah to be established in the country of Iraq, as Sayyidina Saad had intended to live in this place. Sayyidina Saad appointed Amr bin Amir al-Muzani to manage the spoils and Salman radiallahu anhu al-Farsi to distribute a fifth of the spoils of the battle, this is the ghanima, to the soldiers. Now, because the army consisted of mounted soldiers, each soldier got about 12,000 silver dirhams, and the rest was sent to Medina. In Medina, when the wealth reached Sayyidina Umar, he gave the bracelet of Yazdagard to Suraqah bin Malik, who was the man at the time of the Hijrah. We know his story from that time. And Rasulullah had predicted that Suraqah bin Malik would wear the bracelets of the Persian emperor, and this happened. Sayyidina Saad radiallahu anhu, in the first fitna, when it broke out, he convinced many of the surviving Sahaba, including Ibn Abbas, Abdullah bin Umar, Muhammad bin Salama, Anas bin Malik, Al-Qaqa, Ibn Amir al-Tamimi, and Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, and others to remain neutral. Sayyidina Saad, along with Ibn Umar and Ibn Maslama, rejected pleas for assistance from the two factions during the war. Many people resented this action of being pacifistic, but Allah knows which was the best way and what was the right thing to do. But Sayyidina Saad did not take sides in this battle. Sayyidina Saad finally also is known to be the person who outlived all the others, and he died at the age of around 80 in the year 674. There are reports that he is buried in China. The Chinese claim that he died there, and there is a tomb and a grave there in China. But the truth of the matter is that Sayyidina Saad radiallahu anhu died in Medina, and his body was prayed over in Masjid al-Nabi al-Sharif, to the extent that we have the famous hadith, famous story of Sayyidina Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, who was asked whether the body of Sayyidina Saad could be brought inside the masjid to pray because there was raining or something, and she said yes, and this is permissible according to Rasulullah. So this also shows us the position of Sayyida Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, who is the whose knowledge is something which was literally sort of what's the word I want to use? Her knowledge and her wisdom was exemplary, and she was somebody who used to give fatwa even in the time of of the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim ajmain. These are examples, and so says Saad's body was prayed over in Medina, in Masjid Nabawi Sharif, and he is buried in Baig. This is an authentic report of this, and his report of him being buried in China is most likely not correct. But he went to China, this is confirmed, and he is honored to this day, including this. I don't want to say the word rumor, but anyway, that he was buried there, even though it's not true. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to see and understand and learn from the Sahaba, and to use them as examples in our lives, because there is no other and better example. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.